The morning buzzed with energy at Global Path Technologies, the kind of energy that pulsed through the marble floors, hummed beneath the LED lights, and spilled from the glass windows onto the downtown skyline. It was a Monday morning, and like every Monday at this Fortune 500 tech giant, the lobby was a portrait of modern corporate ambition. Sleek-suited executives strode across the floor with Bluetooth earpieces in one ear. Interns clutched triple-shot lattes, and the hum of productivity echoed in every corner. At the center of the grand lobby sat Lindsay, the front desk receptionist. She was a millennial with an expensive manicure, a high ponytail, and an attitude that said she controlled who mattered and who didn't. Her perfectly white teeth showed when she smiled for the right people: VC, influencers, or anyone in Prada. But her expression darkened at the first sign of uninvited distractions. She was flipping between tabs on her MacBook, checking last night's Instagram story analytics when the front doors opened. They didn't slam or swing dramatically, they just opened. Quietly. And in walked an elderly black man. He was in his early 70s, by the looks of it. His skin was a deep brown, mapped with time and lines that told of decades of hard work. His slacks were iron but faded, his sneakers clean but worn. A flat cap sat neatly atop his gray hair. In his arms, he held a manila envelope, slightly creased, as if he'd been clutching it on the long bus ride that likely brought him here. He paused just inside the doors. No one moved. No one greeted him. A few glanced at him, then returned to their phones. One intern visibly scoffed. The man looked around slowly, taking in the space with quiet awe. The glass elevators, the digital art display showing Global Path's growth charts, the enormous silver letters mounted behind the reception desk, Global Path Technologies. He approached the desk. Lindsay didn't look up. "Good morning, young lady," he said warmly, his voice deep and polite. Lindsay finally glanced at him, then gave him a once-over. I'm here to see Mr. Damon Jackson." Her expression didn't change. "And who are you?" she asked, already dismissive. "I'm someone he asked to come by today." He held up the envelope gently. "I have something he asked me to bring." Lindsay raised an eyebrow and smirked. "You have an appointment to see Damon Jackson?" she repeated, her voice laced with disbelief. "Yes, ma'am. You and every other person in this city," she said sarcastically. "Do you have an official invite in the system?" "I have this note," he said, pulling a handwritten message from inside the envelope. She didn't look at it. "Double quote, sir," she said loudly. "Do you realize how many people try to walk in here every week claiming they know the CEO? This isn't a walk-in clinic." The man stood his ground politely. "He said to meet him today." Lindsay waved toward the doors. "Unless your name is in the system, I'm going to have to ask you to wait outside. This space is for clients, vendors, and verified appointments only. Maybe you could read the note?" "I don't read paper notes. We run a paperless front desk." He hesitated, looked down. "I understand, but I came a long way." A young man standing nearby, another intern, leaned to Lindsay and muttered, "Maybe he's from maintenance." She giggled. "More like someone's confused grandpa." The old man said nothing. He simply stood there, as if expecting her to change her mind. But she didn't. She had already pressed the silent security call under her desk. 2 guards would be on their way. "Sir, please, I don't want to call building security, but if you don't leave..." He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice. He just looked around the gleaming lobby once more, the same way someone might look at a place they never thought they'd see again. Then came the elevator ding. Everyone turned. Out stepped Damon Jackson, youngest black CEO in the tech industry, a rising legend. His dark tailored suit shimmered under the overhead lights. He held a leather briefcase and walked with effortless confidence. He took 3 steps, then stopped. "Dad?" he called. The old man looked up. A smile crept onto his face. "Hey, son." And in that moment, The temperature of the lobby changed. Lindsay went pale. The interns froze. Damon walked quickly, ran to his father and pulled him into a tight embrace. "You're early." "Didn't want to miss you," the old man replied. "Brought those photos you asked for." Damon grinned. "You should have called. I would have come down." Then his eyes drifted to Lindsay, to the guards, now awkwardly arriving, to the envelope on the desk, and his smile vanished. "Lindsay," he said, voice clipped. "Did you call security on my father?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out, and the real story was just beginning. Asterisk. The tension in the lobby felt electric. Damon's shoulders stiffened as he looked from the guards to his father, then back at the front desk where Lindsay now sat frozen, her posture rigid, her breath caught in her throat. "Did you call security on my father?" Damon asked again, more quietly now, but with a tone that could cut through glass. Lindsay blinked rapidly. I didn't know who he was. He said he had an appointment, but didn't have anything official. So you didn't even check the note he gave you," Damon interrupted. He stepped forward, picked up the slightly crumpled piece of paper that was still sitting on the desk untouched, and held it up. "This is in my handwriting. You didn't even glance at it, did you?" No, but you assumed," he snapped, his voice still quiet but undeniably sharp. "You assumed he didn't belong here." The guards, sensing the gravity of the situation, slowly took a few steps back. Damon turned back toward his father. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have come down to meet you." The older man, Harold Jackson, shook his head gently. "You don't need to apologize for me, son. I'm used to this sort of thing." Damon's jaw clenched at those words. "That's exactly the problem. You shouldn't be used to it. Not here, not in my company." Gasps fluttered across the lobby. Lindsay blinked again. "Wait, your company?" Damon turned slowly. "Yes, my company. You didn't recognize me?" Of course I did. I just didn't realize he was my father, my mentor. The man who taught me everything. I know. The man who believed in me when we had no money and no roof that didn't leak. He gave up everything so I could one day build this place." Now every intern and staff member nearby stood stock still. Phones were lowered. Even the security guards looked visibly uncomfortable. "I thought he was just Lindsay stopped herself, realizing there was no way to finish that sentence without confirming her own bias. "Exactly," Damon said, his eyes locked onto hers. The silence that followed was deafening. A woman from the marketing department who had just entered the lobby froze in place, confused at the sight of the CEO, his father, and the two stunned security guards. She didn't dare speak. She simply stood in awe, watching a lesson unfold in real time. Harold looked around and spoke for the first time in a while. "I didn't mean to cause a fuss, Damon. I just brought the old family photos you wanted for your birthday. You remember? The ones from Georgia. Your mama's church hat is in one of them." "I remember," Damon said softly. "I asked you to bring them today. I wanted to hang them in my office. I wanted to remember where I came from. Every single day." He turned to the staff. "And this is how he was welcomed?" No one answered. No one dared. Harold chuckled, trying to diffuse the tension. "I guess I don't look like someone who belongs in a place like this, huh?" Damon didn't smile. "You belong everywhere, Dad, especially here." Then he looked at Lindsay again. "You didn't just disrespect my father. You disrespected this entire company's values." Lindsay opened her mouth. "Mr. Jackson, please, I swear I didn't mean." "But you did," he interrupted again. "You meant to dismiss him. You meant to make him feel small. You meant to humiliate him because you thought he was beneath you." Her voice cracked. "I was just doing my job." "No, you weren't. Your job is to greet people with dignity, not decide who matters based on what they wear or how they speak. I don't want people like that at the face of Global Path." Then came the sentence no one ever expected to hear in the lobby of a tech empire. "Pack your things, Lindsay. "You're done here," she gasped audibly. "Please, Mr. Jackson, I need this job." "You needed to show respect," Damon replied. "You didn't. And now I need to make it clear to everyone watching that I stand by the principles this company was founded on, principles my father taught me." A few interns looked at each other in silent approval. A quiet murmur rose among a few spectators as the message sank in. Respect, humility, integrity. Damon turned back to Harold. "Come on, Dad, let's go to my office." Harold raised his eyebrows. "You sure you still want me up there after all that drama?" Damon smiled softly. "You're the only one I do want up there." They walked toward the elevator together, and as the doors opened, Damon paused, glancing back toward the lobby. "Let this be a lesson," he said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The next time someone walks through those doors, you greet them with dignity. You check your assumptions at the door, because you never know who they really are or what they've sacrificed to be here." Then the doors closed behind them, and the silence left behind was not just awkward, it was reflective. Damon's office on the 37th floor was a sleek, modern space with panoramic glass walls overlooking the city. It boasted minimalist furniture, clean lines, and glowing touchscreens, but its soul lived in the handful of personal items on the shelf behind his desk: a childhood drawing in crayon, a rusted wrench, and a faded photograph of a younger Harold Jackson standing beside a dusty old pickup truck. As father and son entered, the heavy doors slid shut behind them, muffling the world below. Harold chuckled softly as he looked around. "You've got a view of the whole city now. Never thought I'd see the day." "You made this possible," Damon said, setting the envelope on the desk. "All of this? This company, this building, my success, it started with you." Harold waved a hand as he sat down gently in one of the leather chairs. "All I did was raise my boy." "No," Damon said, "you built me. Brick by brick, with hands that never stopped working, and a heart that never let me quit." Harold looked around the room again, his eyes glistening just a little. "Your mama would be proud, you know that?" "I hope so," Damon said quietly. For a moment, the two sat in silence. Then Damon leaned back in his chair, letting the weight of the day settle. "You want to know what makes me furious about what just happened downstairs?" Harold didn't respond. He just listened. "It's not the embarrassment, not even the disrespect. It's the fact that the woman thought she was right. She looked at you and saw someone who didn't matter. Because you didn't wear a Rolex, because you didn't walk in like you owned the place." Harold's lips curled into a quiet smile. "But I do own part of the place." Damon chuckled. "You own 30% of it. You're the second largest shareholder after me. You're on the founding papers. You literally own the building." "I know," Harold said with a wink. "But I don't need anyone else to know that." Damon leaned forward. "Tell me again why you never tell people. Why you never show up to board meetings. Why you've never once used your name to get ahead." Harold paused. "Because I didn't build this company. You did. I just lit the match and handed you the torch." Damon sat back and closed his eyes for a moment. His father's humility was legendary, but it had been earned through struggle most people couldn't imagine. Harold Jackson was born in 1951 in rural Alabama, in a town where black children weren't allowed to sit in the same classroom as white ones. He was the son of a steel worker and a laundress, both of whom worked long hours and died young. Harold never finished high school, not because he didn't want to, but because he had to pick up work cleaning warehouses and fixing trucks just to survive. At 18, he enlisted in the Army. The uniform gave him dignity. The paycheck gave him food. But even there, racism followed him, from slurs in the mess hall to being overlooked for promotions. He served 2 tours, earned medals, and returned home to nothing but shuttered factories and a rising tide of bills. He married young Lucille, a nurse he met at a church picnic, and together they had one child, Damon. They lived in a 2-bedroom rental behind a grocery store. The roof leaked. The stove clicked before it lit, but it was home. Lucille passed away when Damon was 10. Harold never remarried. Instead, he poured his entire soul into raising his son. He fixed cars during the day, mopped floors at night, and built custom radios on weekends to make extra cash. He taught Damon to solder wires, to polish shoes, to pray before meals, and to always say, "Yes, ma'am," and "No, sir," even when the world showed no kindness in return. He wasn't just a father, he was the foundation. Damon went to public school, but his talent with computers shone early. At 15, he built his first network server out of salvaged parts. At 17, he was tutoring college students. By 20, he dropped out of MIT to build his startup. Using $5,000 Harold had saved over a decade of janitorial shifts, that company became Global Path. And Damon never forgot the cost of that $5,000. "You know," Harold said suddenly, "I almost didn't come today." "What?" Damon looked up. "Yeah, woke up this morning, looked in the mirror and said, 'Harold, what are you doing going up to a skyscraper full of people half your age who wear shoes worth more than your rent?'" Damon frowned. "Why would you think that?" Harold shrugged. "Because that's how I was raised. To stay in the back, to not make noise, to be grateful for scraps. Even when I had shares in this place, I still felt like a visitor." "That's not okay," Damon said firmly. "You belong here. You belong in every room I walk into. You helped build me." Harold smiled. "And look what you've become." "No," Damon said. "Look what we built together." There was a pause. Then Harold reached into his jacket and pulled out an old, worn leather photo wallet. Inside were creased pictures, Damon at 5 with a toy keyboard, Damon and Lucille at a county fair, a faded letter from MIT with a congratulatory note. "I keep these with me," Harold said quietly, "because sometimes I still need to remind myself it all really happened." Damon swallowed hard. "I want to hang that one," he said, pointing to the fair photo. "Right there on the wall. So everyone who walks into this office sees where I came from." Harold laughed. "Then they better know that the boy in that picture didn't come from money, but came from love." Outside the glass windows, the city shimmered in the summer haze. Inside, 2 generations sat together, one shaped by history, the other shaping the future. And for a moment, the skyscraper didn't feel like a monument to power or wealth. It felt like a house built on love, sacrifice, and steel. By the time Damon and Harold stepped out of the elevator and re-entered the lobby later that afternoon, something had shifted. The building itself felt quieter, more alert, as though the walls had absorbed the tension from that morning and were now holding their breath. But the silence didn't last. Because in the age of smartphones, nothing stays private for long. Someone, an intern, most likely had captured part of the earlier confrontation on video. The moment Damon hugged his father, the look on Lindsay's face when she realized who the man really was. Damon's words, "You didn't just disrespect my father, you disrespected this company's values." By lunch, the video had hit 300,000 views. By evening, it was climbing toward 1 million. It had a hashtag now. Hashtag CEO Dad. The story was everywhere on TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn. Major outlets picked it up. "Receptionist dismisses elderly man, turns out he owns the building," read one headline. "Tech CEO fires employee after she disrespects his father," read another. People debated it in comment sections. Some praised Damon's swift action. Others dissected the racial undertones, the assumptions, the quiet bias that so often goes unchecked. In the marketing department, LA's senior team lead watched the video in disbelief. "That receptionist was so confident," she whispered, "like she really believed he didn't belong." Across from her, a younger analyst replied, "It's how bias works. It convinces people that what they see is truth, even when it's dead wrong." Meanwhile, HR was flooded with emails. Some were from employees thanking Damon for standing up. Others expressed concerns about company culture, asking what would be done to ensure this never happened again. But not everyone was quiet. Lindsay, escorted out of the building shortly after the incident, had already posted a carefully curated version of events online. In her post, she wrote, "I was simply doing my job, protecting company property and protocols. I did not disrespect anyone. I followed procedure. I didn't know who the man was, and I was terminated without warning." That too went viral, but not in the way she hoped. Commenters pointed out how she had refused to read the note, how she made sarcastic remarks, how her job wasn't just about enforcing policy, it was about representing the company with professionalism and basic humanity. The internet was swift. Screenshots of old tweets and DMs surfaced, posts where Lindsay had made fun of elderly people, of certain communities. The court of public opinion was harsh and loud, but Damon? He stayed silent. He didn't post, didn't respond to the media frenzy. Instead, he focused inward. The next day, Damon called a company-wide meeting in the main auditorium. Every employee, remote or in person, was expected to tune in. The room was packed. He stepped onto the stage, simple in a gray blazer and dark jeans. No teleprompter, no PR-crafted statement. Just Damon. "I want to talk about what happened in our lobby," he began, his voice steady but direct. "Because it's not just a story about one receptionist and one moment. It's a mirror. And we all need to look into it." He paused. "My father walked into this building, a building he helped fund through decades of sacrifice. A man who has seen more in his lifetime than most of us can imagine. And he was dismissed, judged, assumed to be less than." People shifted in their seats. Some nodded solemnly. Others looked down. This isn't about one employee making a bad call. It's about a culture, our culture, and whether we truly live up to the values we write on our walls and websites. Respect, inclusion, integrity. They're not buzzwords, they're promises. He looked into the crowd, and if we don't hold ourselves accountable when those promises are broken, then they mean nothing. A long silence followed. Then Damon added, "That's why I've asked our DA leadership team to review every point of entry into this company hiring, reception, interviews, client onboarding. We're going to implement new training, yes, but more than that, we're going to change the lens we use to see each other." Scattered applause broke out. Then it grew. Some employees stood, not for drama, not for show, but because they felt something had shifted. Later that afternoon, Damon sat in his office going through emails when his assistant knocked. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "From the janitorial team." "Send them in," he said without hesitation. An older Latino man entered, hands still smudged with work, cap in hand. "Mr. Jackson, I just wanted to say thank you for what you did yesterday. I've been working here 6 years, and, well, let's just say, some of us don't always feel seen." Damon stood, walked over, and shook his hand. "You are seen," Damon said. "And you matter to this company just as much as anyone else." The man's eyes watered slightly as he nodded and left. Meanwhile, Harold, quiet as ever, returned to his modest apartment that night. He didn't mention the media storm, didn't brag to the neighbors. Instead, he sat at his kitchen table, pulled out a photo album, and slipped the photo of him and Damon at the fair back into its spot. Then he smiled, not because his son had gone viral, but because his son had remembered what he taught him. That a man's worth isn't in his wallet or his shoes or his skin, but in how he treats those with no power to reward him. Harold had spent his whole life building that principle brick by brick. And now, the world had watched it hold up a skyscraper. 3 weeks had passed since the lobby incident. Most companies would have buried the scandal, issued a brief HR memo, and moved on. But not Damon Jackson. And not Global Path Technologies, because Damon didn't want to move on. He wanted to move forward. And moving forward meant honoring not just what happened, but why it happened, and how to make sure it never would again. The memorial wall, it started with a simple idea. A wall in the main corridor, just outside the executive suites. Not for awards, not for glossy company photos, but for stories. Damon named it the Foundation's Wall, a tribute to the people whose sacrifices laid the path for those in suits to walk without. Stumbling dot at the very center of the wall was a large, black and white portrait of Harold Jackson at age 30, leaning against a dusty pickup truck, grease on his jeans, a tool belt over his shoulder. Beneath the photo, a brass plaque read, Harold Jackson, veteran, father, mechanic, co-founder of the dream. No skyscraper stands without a basement. No CEO rises without a father who bent his back. Around Harold's image were dozens of stories photos, and quotes from employees' parents, grandparents, mentors. Some were immigrants who arrived with nothing but hope. Others were single moms who worked 3 jobs. One was a janitor who had taught himself calculus so his daughter could get into MIT. The wall became a quiet place of reflection. Executives walked slower in the hallway now. Interns often paused, reading the names and the legacies. Even clients asked to visit it during tours, that it wasn't just a tribute, that it was a mirror. Lindsay's letter one morning. Damon received a handwritten envelope. Handwriting was neat, but shaky. The return address was unfamiliar. He opened it, unsure what to expect. It was from Lindsay. She had been let go. She had faced backlash online. And according to the letter, she had also spent the last few weeks in therapy, confronting some uncomfortable truths about herself. I didn't write to ask for my job back, she began. I wrote to tell you that I finally see what I couldn't before. I didn't just see your father as someone who didn't belong. I saw myself as someone who got to decide who did. That's what privilege looks like. I just never realized I had it. She ended the letter with a quote Harold had spoken in the now famous viral clip. You never know what someone's carried just to stand where they're standing. Damon folded the letter and quietly slid it into the back pocket of the album of Harold's photos. He didn't hate Lindsay. He just hoped she meant it. A new position that same week. Damon made a surprise announcement during an all-hands meeting. I've created a new executive role, he said. Chief Legacy Officer. Their job won't be about numbers, budgets, or quarterly earnings. Their job will be to protect our soul, to ensure our values are not just printed, but practiced. The room was silent. Then came the bigger surprise. And the first person to hold that role is Harold Jackson. Employees erupted in applause. Some stood. Some wept. Some had never met Harold but already felt like they knew him. Harold, seated in the front row, looked genuinely stunned. He leaned over to Damon. You serious? As serious as that day you caught me skipping school and made me paint the garage twice, Harold chuckled. I don't even have a college degree. You have something better, Damon said. You have a life degree. And no one else knows how to teach this company what it means to walk with both pride and humility. Harold reluctantly agreed, but only under one condition. I'm not wearing a suit, he warned. You never have to. The classroom visit a few months later. Damon and Harold visited a public high school in Atlanta where Damon had once spoken as a teenager. The principal was a former classmate. He now ran a mentorship program for at-risk youth. They invited Damon to give a speech. Damon agreed on one condition. His father would speak too. They stood in front of a class of 11th graders, some wide-eyed, some skeptical, some clearly carrying their own weighty stories. Damon gave the expected speech rising from nothing, building a billion-dollar company, the value of focus and persistence. But when Harold stepped up, the tone shifted. he told a different story. "I didn't build any apps," he said. "I didn't write any code. But I once worked 4 jobs so my son could have light to read at night. I fixed engines with cracked fingers so he'd never have to skip lunch. I showed up. And that was enough." You don't have to be rich to be important. You don't need a title to leave a legacy. Sometimes, the strongest person in the room is the one who keeps showing up, even when no one claps for them. There was silence, then thunderous applause. One boy in the front row wearing beat-up sneakers and a cast on his wrist stood up and simply said, "I'm gonna show up too." Years later, the world changed, as it always does, but the story of Harold Jackson remained, etched not just in company memory, but in hearts around the world. Years later, long after Harold had retired from Global Path, long after Damon had stepped down and passed the baton to a new generation, there was still one place people never forgot to visit: the Foundation's wall. Visitors still came from across the country. School kids, journalists, even CEOs. They stood in front of Harold's photo and whispered to each other about that day, the day an old man walked into a building he helped build and was told he didn't belong. But more importantly, they talked about what happened after. Because in that building, a mistake became a movement, a dismissal became a declaration, a father became a founder, and a company became more than its profits. One quiet afternoon, a janitor was cleaning the floors near the lobby. A young intern walked past, nearly bumping into his mop bucket. The janitor smiled gently. "Careful now, slippery here." The intern stopped, looked at him, and instead of walking past, he extended his hand. "Thank you for everything you do." "Really?" The janitor blinked, surprised, then smiled again. In the glass reflection behind them, Harold Jackson's photo still watched over the lobby. And his legacy lived on, not just in what people remembered, but in how they acted.